Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to August 21st meeting for Council. Just a reminder, please turn off your mobile phones and have them on silence. Statement of acknowledgement. Basco Shire Council acknowledges the Bunurong as the traditional owners and custodians of the land and waters, and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. They hold the memories, the tradition, the culture and the law. Basco Shire Council celebrates the opportunity to embrace and empower Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities in their diversity. At Basco Shire Council, we will create opportunities for future recognition and respectful partnerships that will honour the traditional owners and custodians, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Councillor Ellis, will you please read the Councillor's statement?
Thank you, Mayor Lasserve. Councillor statement. All members of this council pledge to the Basco Shire community to consider every item listed on this agenda based on the individual merits of each item, without bias or prejudice, by maintaining an open mind and disregarding councillors' personal interests so as to avoid any conflict with our public duty. Any councillor having a conflict of interest in an item will make a proper prior disclosure to the meeting and will not participate in the debate nor vote on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Item 1, President apologies. We're all in attendance, so there's no apologies. Thank you. Item 2 was declaration of interest. There's been no declarations of interest. Thank you. Item 3 would be confirmation of the minutes held on the 17th of July. I request a councillor to move. So move Councillor Ellis. The seconder. So move Councillor Lang. Thank you. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. The councillors' reports I'll forego councillors speaking to their monthly reports, and they'll be included in the councillors' minutes. But at this stage, I'll request that Councillor Les Lark have a veil to John Owens. Thank you, Councillor Lark.
Mayor Lasserve, we would like to pay our respects to Mr John Owens, who passed away peacefully at Rose Lodge on 18 July 2024. Mr Owens was a plumber by trade and a very active community leader within the Wonthaggi district area. His involvement with sporting clubs included Phillip Island Football Club captain coach, Wonthaggi Rovers Football Club coach, and senior roles in basketball, golf, tennis and life-saving clubs too. He was also a member of the Wonthaggi Fire Brigade, Italian Club and a past master of the Masonic Lodge. Mr Owens held various positions in the Wonthaggi Rotary Club and represented Rotary overseas in Papua New Guinea and Tonga, assisting with building infrastructures in these communities. Due to his meritorious service to the community, he was awarded 2 Paul Harris Fellowships. Mr Owens was also an active member of the Wonthaggi District Hospital Committee, now Bass Coast Health, and the new hospital you see now is because of volunteers like Mr Owens. Mr Owens was also privileged to be one of the recipients of a plaque placed on the wall of the new hospital titled Honouring Our People. Over his years of community service, he was a recipient of the following: Borough of Wonthaggi Citizen of the Year, Australian Government Certificate for Overseas Voluntary Work, Centenary Medal for Community Work, Bass Coast Shire Citizen of the Year, and Order of Australia Medal for services to the community. As well as running his own plumbing business and being heavily involved within the community, his family were most important to him. He was an amazing husband, father, grandfather and great-grandfather. And a more detailed tribute will be included in Council's minute. But in the meantime, Vale Mr John Owens, and thank you for your everlasting contribution to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lark. We'll move on to public question time. Ms Borley, will you read out the questions, and Mr Box, will you please read the response? Questions and responses will be included in the council's meeting minutes. Thank you, Ms Borley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question 1 comes from Clint Hines, and the topic is choosing financial institutions. Could the council provide an estimate of the likely financial impact of the changes to investments that have resulted from the update to the investment policy section 2.3 fossil fuel divestment?
Through the Mayor. The approved increase from 0.3% to 0.5% in the interest rate differential applied for preferencing non-fossil fuels investments has had no financial impact to Council. Records maintained since this policy was adopted on the 13th of December confirm that the largest interest rate differential applied was 0.10% and that the mean differential was 0.037%, well within the parameters of the prior policy.
Question 2 comes from Bill Wilson, and the topic is Merrill Robe. Council's missing historic Merrill chains has been questioned repeatedly by residents. However, the missing historic Merrill Robe has not been reported on. What is Council doing to find or replace the missing Merrill Robe that shows status to the Mayor?
Through the Mayor. The Merrill Robe was identified as missing at the same time as the Merrill chains and was included as part of the search. The Merrill robes were not located and there are no plans to replace them. A Merrill collarette has been procured for official use. This is a more modern and cost-effective symbol of office and reflects the whole of Bass Coast, not just the former borough of Wonthaggi.
Question 3, also from Bill Wilson, and the topic is Cowes Cultural and Community Centre. The Cowes Cultural and Community Centre was designed passive house. The building has failed the passive house certificate test. Is Council now modifying the passive house requirements for the building so that the theatre section of the building can achieve passive house registered certificate?
Through the Mayor. No, Council will not be modifying the passive house requirements of the building. Council continues to work with the builder in achieving passive house certification at no cost to Council.
Question 4 comes from Ernie Westergaard. The topic is net zero. Council declared a climate emergency with a plan to reach net zero in year 2030. At current reduction CO2 levels per year, Council might reduce CO2 by 65,000 tonnes at year 2030. What will the net reduction on average in climate temperature be in year 2030?
Through the Mayor. Bass Coast is working towards net zero and have reduced its emissions by approximately 50% since 2020. Climate change is a global issue and all parties must commit to reduce emissions to ensure a stable climate.
Question 5 comes from Joe Warrilow, and the topic is social and affordable housing. The state government allocated $25 million some time ago towards social and affordable housing for Bass Coast Shire. Would Council please provide progress so far in terms of build numbers and total expenses as of 31 July 2024?
Through the Mayor. While Council has an affordable housing strategy and it is included in our advocacy priorities, delivery of this program is the responsibility of the state government. To date, the state government has committed $16.5 million of the $25 million guaranteed investment to 8 projects. 7 homes funded through the Big Housing Build have been completed, with 31 homes currently underway and 149 local jobs created through the investment.
Question 6 comes from Melissa Dagg, and the topic is Wonthaggi North East Precinct. Wonthaggi North East Precinct developer contribution overall plan will not meet the cost towards future infrastructure towards the full development. Council is reporting a shortfall funding gap. How is Council going to forward fund the shortfall in funds towards future infrastructure?
Through the Mayor, Council is optimising infrastructure and community facility delivery costs by leveraging developer contributions. Council has also developed an infrastructure priority listing to schedule and prioritise works and land acquisitions that accelerate development. Additionally, the Council continues to seek other funding opportunities, acknowledging a funding gap in the development. Council is also advocating with peri-urban councils across Victoria for a future fund to be established by the Victorian Government.
Question 7 comes from Graham Jolly, and the topic is waste charge. The proposed good practice regulations for setting waste charge will change how Council charges. Public waste collection council cost is $1.2 million per year, now payable by a number of properties. What action is Council undertaking before the 2025-26 budget year to its waste charge reduction to the paying properties?
Through the Mayor, The impact of any legislative changes to the waste charge will be considered through the 2025-26 budget development process. The community will have the opportunity to provide comment on the draft 2025-26 budget when it is released in 2025.
Question 8 comes from Susie Wicks and is in two parts. The topic is urban roads and drainage policy. Question 1. Under the new urban roads and drainage policy, small areas that have lodged a petition to have their streets sealed and drains installed and that now have had their petition endorsed by Council for Works are being asked to choose between up to 5 different treatment options. Does this mean that small adjoining areas or streets could end up with 5 different road and drainage treatments?
Through the Mayor, yes, there are different styles of treatment being considered for road and drainage projects.
Question 2. Had Council approved a company to undertake the roads and drainage works in Surf Beach and Sunderland Bay prior to the community successfully achieving 50% plus 1 to have the special charge scheme abandoned as per legislation?
Through the Mayor, no.
Question 9 comes from Philip Davey, also in two parts, also regarding the urban roads and drainage policy. Question 1. 2024 ERDI, the Esplanade Zephyr Court to Sunderland Bay Road, has 4 existing stormwater discharge points over the cliff top, discharging stormwater, pollutants and eroding the cliff face. What is Council planning to eliminate this environmental issue from continuing?
Through the Mayor, drainage outfall treatments will be considered as part of the road and drainage upgrade works.
Question 2, 2024 ERDI policy ranking states there is a risk of sewage overflows to Western Port Bay due to illegal drainage connections in Surf Beach. Council has known this fact for 3 decades. Why hasn't Council previously conducted smoke tests and rectified this situation by implementing Council's stormwater policy and AS 3500.3?
Through the Mayor, smoke testing for illegal drainage connections to the wastewater network is the responsibility of the local water authority.
Question 10 comes from Louise Lyle and again is a question in 2 parts regarding the urban roads and drainage policy. Question 1. Batman Avenue, Glen Street and Dunvegan Crescent, numbers 2, 3 and 17 on the 2024 ERDI policy discharge stormwater to the farmland in Swan Bay. Is Council proposing to protect the environment by constructing wetlands prior to discharging excessive stormwater at increased velocities and pollutants from these catchments?
Through the Mayor, drainage outfall treatments will be considered as part of the road and drainage upgrade works.
Part 2. In the 2024 ERDI policy scoring and ranking, Council places a high importance on construction of streets that connect to tourism and beach areas. How does Council justify charging ratepayers majority costs for construction when the majority of special benefit is for tourism, not ratepayers' special benefits?
Through the Mayor, the Council contribution for each project will be assessed on a case-by-case situation and will be based on the wider community benefit received from the project improvements.
Question 11 comes from Fred Morris and the topic is footpath cleaning. Would Council please advise matters of footpath cleaning in the shopping strip of Cows? What is the cleaning intervals and who is responsible for the cleaning?
Through the Mayor, footpath sweeping is undertaken by Council on a regular cycle, with the street sweeping undertaken twice a week. This does increase during peak periods and events.
Question 12 comes from Terry Parkin and the topic is EV charging stations in Newhaven. Please provide an update progress report to the delayed installation of electric vehicle charging stations to be installed at the Newhaven Visitor Information Centre site.
Through the Mayor, installation of the EV charging station at Newhaven Information Centre is scheduled to be completed by the end of the financial year.
Questions 13 and 14 come from Graham Jolly and John Cantoni. Identical questions have been submitted. Why has Council moved away from its primary responsibility and scope of core duties by having representatives with South East Council's Climate Change Alliance, comprising 2 councillors, 1 a chairperson, and 2 paid council officers dealing with matters connected to the objectives of SECA, a very financial organisation?
Through the Mayor, 1 councillor sits on the SECA Councillor Advisory Group and 1 officer on the Management Committee. Council works collaboratively with SECA and the 8-member councils to achieve efficiencies in projects which deliver climate change outcomes across the region.
Question 15 comes from Gina Rosamilia and the topic is upgrade to children's play spaces. Council has progressively upgrading a number of children play spaces in the Shire. What does Council do with the old discontinued equipment removed from each site?
Through the Mayor, Council's old play spaces are carefully removed so they can be catalogued, packed into shipping containers and reused overseas as part of the Rotary Overseas Relocation Project. Following the recent upgrades, the old Cape Woolamai play space is on its way to Cape Town, while the play space from Outrigger and Inverloch is on its way to Cambodia.
Question 16 comes from Mario Boffa and the topic is shared pathways. Would Council please provide the progress for the continuation of the shared pathway from Cows to Rill, which was determined so time ago?
Through the Mayor, Council is delivering the Cows Rill shared path in partnership with Phillip Island Nature Parks. The project is being delivered in 5 stages. Stage 1 is complete and Stage 2 is due for completion in September. Stages 3 to 5 are in various stages of design. Further information on each of these is available on the Engage Bass Coast website.
Question 17 is a further question from John Cantone. The topic is Silverleaves erosion. Would Council please explain its role and Council's current plan to protect property owners at Silverleaves on Phillip Islands North from foreshore erosion that is advancing at a rapid rate towards residential properties?
Through the Mayor, Council officers and Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action, DECA, representatives met with members of the public at Silverleaves in August to discuss foreshore erosion. DECA have commissioned an adaptation planning project for Silverleaves. The coastal processes study will be made public following DECA approval. Council will continue to monitor the situation and carry out minor sand renourishment works as needed prior to the release of the coastal processes study.
Question 18 is from Joe Warrilow and the topic is Asset Register. Council has an asset register for all infrastructure across the Shire. How is the asset value determined each year that is recorded in the register?
Through the Mayor, Council is required to carry out an annual fair value assessment of the carrying value of its infrastructure network and the fixed property it owns or controls. This assessment requires it to do a desktop review of the current asset class replacement costs. This is complemented by an impairment review of the assets to ensure that they are still in use or able to be used. In addition, Council is required to revalue each of its infrastructure and property asset classes on a recurring 4-year basis. While impairment tests are done for Council's plant and equipment assets, they are not subject to the above revaluation requirements and are valued at cost less accumulated depreciation.
Question 19 comes from Ernie Westergaard and the topic is Council's complaint handling. Council's Complaints Handling Committee is made up of the Mayor, Deputy Mayor, CEO and the Governance Manager. During the year 2023-24, how many Complaints Handling Committee meetings were held to resolve complaints?
Through the Mayor, Council does not have a Complaints Handling Committee. Council's Complaints Handling Policy outlines the types of complaints, the escalation process and who the complaint is referred to for assessment.
Question 20 comes from Fred Morris and the topic is Council Briefings Agenda Items. Is there any laws governing councillors prohibiting a councillor from requesting an agenda item to be added to a councillor briefing meeting? What are the laws?
Through the Mayor, there are no laws prohibiting councillors requesting a briefing.
Question 21 is from Gina Rosamilia and the topic is Governance Policy 2022. Would Council please explain as to why Council's Governance Policy 2022 reviewed on H March 2024 without seeking community engagement?
Through the Mayor, an administrative update was made to the Governance Rules 2022, which removed a reference to a specific financial year. Administrative updates have no impact on the intent or outcomes of the policy and do not require community engagement.
Question 2022 comes from Terry Parkin and the topic is Community Satisfaction Survey. The Community Satisfaction Survey is important understanding for residents of the Bass Coast Shire. Councillors were given a briefing at a recent meeting. When will the survey full report be released to the public?
Through the Mayor, the 2024 Community Satisfaction Survey is available on Council's website.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms Bowley. Thank you, Mr Box. We'll move on to petition 7.1. Petition is a rezoning of the carnival land at Cows Phillip Island. I have a councillor pleased to move. Thank you, councillor Rooks. And a councillor to second. Councillor to second, sorry. Councillor Bauer.
I'm on mute, Councillor.
Sorry,
I
councillor...
wasn't mute. I have a question for the
No,
officers.
hold on, councillor Bauer. Councillor Rooks has moved and you've seconded, am I right?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Rooks, want to speak to it?
Thanks, Mayor Laserve. Thanks for the petition and the community interest in this site. It's a site which has huge potential and is very exciting for future recreation purposes on Phillip Island. There is plenty to do at the site. There is establishing road access with RRV. There's plenty of design works to do. We've got to allocate some more budget to get things going. We've even got to work out the name. I note in this we're rezoning the carnival land at Phillip Island, but it's also the Phillip Island Rec Reserve. So we've got some work to do to get that sorted as well. And we've also got to work on the rezone. But the rezone doesn't have to be done now, it can be done later. We can still go ahead with the works that we want to be doing at this stage, so it can be delayed.
Good, thank you, councillor Rooks. Councillor Bauer?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question for the officers, please. At what point is the tipping point for when we do need to get the land rezoned for the recreation centre?
Thank you. I'll just ask which officer. Ms Taylor?
Through the Mayor, the master plan for the site identifies a number of short, medium and longer term actions. It's anticipated that the rezoning of the land would be required when we move to the medium term actions, which are currently anticipated to be delivered between 11 and 20 years from adoption of the plan. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank
Anything
you.
further, councillor Bauer?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, fellow councillors and ratepayers who are watching this meeting. When I was first elected to council, we acquired what is known as the carnival site with the intention of developing as a sports precinct. We have approved the master plan for the various facilities to be built there, with the showpiece being the aquatic centre. I acknowledge that some of the infrastructure will take a long time to be built, but other parts of the puzzles could begin quickly. Our community is begging for it. As an example, the football club has increased its membership from 2020 to 2024 by 30 to 40%, according to the club's president, Chris Ross. The Bulldogs have done remarkably well, considering they're playing in a mud pit. We don't even have a basketball facility on the island, the closest to San Remo. It would be a shame if the zoning requirements, which I've been told will take at least a year, would delay or stifle any of the projects, especially the aquatic centre. We should redirect our state and federal advocacy to the recreation master plan and away from the streetscape master plan if it is a funding issue. I believe sporting facilities are far more important to our community than going down Thompson Avenue one way with reduced parking. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Bauer. Any further discussions from any other councillors on this petition? If not, put it to councillor Rooks. Put it to the vote. Those in favour of the recommendation? Thank you, that's carried. 7.2 is a petition, the road infrastructure upgrade for Dover Street, Sutherland Bay. I request a councillor to move the recommendation. Councillor Holstead. Seconder. Councillor Bauer. Councillor Rooks. Councillor Holstead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to state that I think, again, this is great news, and I thank the officers for the recommendation. It's really pleasing to see another street in this area that's taking advantage of the new urban road and drainage infrastructure policy. So I wish everyone well in that area. I know they've had concerns around the flooding and the dust, and moving forward in this direction will certainly, I believe, be much better for their health and well-being. So congratulations to residents that have pushed for this, and I look forward to seeing it progress. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Holstead. Councillor Rooks.
No, I just concur with Councillor Halstead's comments.
Any further discussion from councillors? No. Councillor Holstead will put that to the vote.
Yes,
Thank you.
Madam
Those in
Mayor.
favour of the recommendation? Thank you. That's carried. Items that require a council decision. 8.1, Ms Taylor, would you introduce, please?
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present a planning application for the use of land as a service station, convenience restaurant, signage and variation of a Crown grant at 63, 65 and 67 Mackenzie Street, Wonthaggi. The application is before Council as 17 objections have been received. The application has been assessed by Council officers and it is recommended that a planning permit issue for the application. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lark.
Move an alternative recommendation. Thank you, Mayor Lasserve.
Thank you. Councillor Lark, are you moving your alternative recommendation? Do you want to read the prelude to that?
Yes, that the summary is that a refusal to grant a planning permit is issued for the application 2023 000851 located at 63, 65 and 67 Mackenzie Street, Wonthaggi.
Okay, thank you. Is there a councillor second that? Councillor Tessari. Councillor Lark, do you want to speak to the alternate recommendation, please?
Yes, just short and brief, Mayor. My understanding is that the primary purpose of the general residential zone is to respect and preserve neighbourhood character whilst allowing housing growth and diversity. My view, particularly in times of our current housing and rental crisis, is that the proposed development for a service station and convenience restaurant is not suitable land use in this context, and therefore I recommend refusal of this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lark. Councillor Tessari.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with Councillor Lark and I support his alternative motion. You walk that block, and I don't do a lot of walking, but you walk that strip, and one block up there's a petrol station. Around the corner from that there's a petrol station. There's a petrol station down the road. There's a petrol station a little bit further down the road, and now they're trying to put another one on another corner. Surely Wonthaggi deserves a little bit more imagination than just we find a big block of land and let's put a petrol station on it. I couldn't agree more. There's so many other things that could go there apart from this petrol station, so support the alternative motion.
Thank you, Councillor Tessari. Any other councillors who'd like to have discussion? Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be also supporting Councillor Lark's alternative motion to refuse this application. I think that the black and white reading of the council of the planning rules have marked a really dangerous precedent for people living in residential zones. I think we're sort of giving the message, if that this notice of refusal isn't passed, that if you live in a residential zone that is optimal to put a service station on, you might just get away with it. I find that deeply concerning for the community who 2 weeks ago had a community gathering with a significant amount of people to acknowledge Homelessness Week. Homelessness is a serious problem which Councillor Lark has already highlighted, and one of the objectors, Homes Victoria, has highlighted a number of the application of the planning rules to potentially give an argument that the interpretation that we should be recommending this is incorrect. I'm also really concerned for the local businesses who had to struggle through COVID and now are having to struggle with franchises that are popping up, even potentially in residential zones. So in conclusion, I think that this application and for a permit is not compatible with residential use. I've noted the objections from the community and also from a Victorian government authority who reject the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Whelan.
I'd like to also, I'm going to agree and thank Councillor Lark for actually moving this as an alternative recommendation, very much echo the sentiments put by Councillor Lang, and wanted in particular to, the objections were all mostly from my reading along the lines of the shortage of housing, and one in particular said you don't hear it around the town, people saying, geez, we really need more convenience stores, or petrol stations for that matter. But you do hear people talking about our housing crisis. Now, it really annoys me when we hear the term not a planning consideration. We're talking to a planning act that is being out of date, goes back to the 80s originally. We're talking about a planning scheme that is not fit for purpose across the state. We had mentioned earlier today of a very effective organisation known as SECA, who had a report commissioned by Hanson, known as the Hanson Report, which went through line by line with the changes that are needed for this planning scheme. We've had the DAL. We've had all of these sort of things that sit somewhere in government. We don't see the reform that's necessary. What's really necessary here is to prioritise housing. People are screaming for their housing. They're in deep trouble, not only in this town but across our shire and across our country. And yet we're talking about putting in out-of-date technology for ICE vehicles that we won't be driving in 10 years' time. Time to get real.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. Any other councillors like to put forward? No? I'll go back to Councillor Lark. Councillor Lark, anything further?
Nothing further. I just thank Councillor Lasserve and Tassari and Whelan for their articulation of the matters that we care about. So I just would like to put it to a vote.
Okay, put that to the vote. Those councillors in favour of the alternate recommendation, please show their hands. Thank you. That's carried. Item 8.2, requested authorisation for Ms Taylor to read out the prelude to 8.2. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Ms Road.
The purpose of this report is to request Council consider preparing a planning scheme amendment to rezone 5 parcels of land at King Road, Coronella, from farming zone to public use zone Schedule 1. The rezoning has been requested by Western Port Water and is required to facilitate future growth of the King Road wastewater treatment plant. The application is strategically justified as it is required to ensure that Western Port Water can sustainably manage and expand their existing facility to cater for future demand. Given the significance of the project, it is recommended that Council resolve to commence the planning scheme amendment process and in doing so, request that the Minister for Planning intervene in the amendment process by removing notice requirements for the amendment. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Taylor. Have a councillor moved the recommendation? Councillor Holstead. Have I got a councillor to second? Councillor Ellis, thank you. Councillor Holstead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When you have your utilities starting to expand their infrastructure, does tell you just how quickly our population is growing. So I obviously support the recommendation to sustain that growing population. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Holstead, Councillor Ellis.
I think Councillor Holstead's covered it pretty well. This is something that needs to happen. We can trust Western Port Water to do it properly, and anything the Minister for Local Government can do to speed the path would be much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Any other councillors like to make comment to the recommendation? If not, Councillor Holstead, will we put that? Thank you. Those in favour of the recommendation? Thank you. That's carried. 8.3, Ms Taylor, will you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present to Council the final Structures Asset Management Plan for consideration. The plan outlines target levels of service for Council's 1,200 structures, which include boat ramps, jetties, major culverts, bridges, public art and retaining walls. The plan demonstrates a responsible approach to the management of Council's structures and recommends long-term funding and improvement actions required to ensure our assets are fit for purpose for the community. It is recommended that the Structures Asset Management Plan be adopted.
Thank you, Ms Taylor. Have I got a councillor to move that? Thank you, Councillor Rooks and Councillor Holstead. Thank you. Councillor Rooks.
Thank you, Mayor Lasserve. First up, I'd like to thank council officers for all the work they've done with the asset plans over the recent months. It's been fantastic to see everything come together. And this one, the structures asset, is a recently created asset division due to the high risk of these assets. And it's best practice to pull this lot of assets aside because of that nature. We always see a great presentation in the briefings from the asset team, so thank you once again for that a few weeks ago. And they had put in the recommendation to go for the safest option with regards to the structures that we have, and that will remove all poor and very poor assets that we have on our list, which is very minor, but they want to get rid of those completely, which seems appropriate for structures. So I do support this plan and make note that it's subject to the budget.
Okay, good. Thank you, Councillor Rooks. Councillor Holstead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Comments there, and would just add that this plan will ensure that our infrastructure is well managed and maintained. It's, in simple terms, it's like owning a house. If you don't invest in your home and maintain it by painting and repairing, then it will deteriorate both in its performance and value, and we don't want to see that happen to our Shire's assets. It's absolutely critical Council invest here, as it'll cost ratepayers a lot more not to. So it is my hope when the budget comes around next that this plan is adequately supported and with the funds that it will need. It's just a shame that the state government doesn't have something like this, and we might still have Newhaven Jetty able to be used by the community. But in saying that, Madam Mayor, I congratulate the team that's been behind this plan, and I'm really pleased to see it come to Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. Is there any other councillors who would like to add to the debate? Councillor Whelan?
Yes, this is a budget bid, and let's understand that. This is what we need to do to maintain these assets at this level. But it's not guaranteed, because it says it's subject to the Council's annual budget process, which is also subject to the approvals by the Minister in terms of rate increases. And in a number of recent budgets, the Minister has chosen to cut the Council's income in real terms, while I might add not cutting their own income in terms of land tax, which have actually gone up, and the categories have been extended to allow other properties otherwise exempt to be caught. So there's a grab for money on the one hand, but squeezing local government on another. So I flag here purely to the community that we are facing a crunch in the future in terms of where we have been able to deliver on a lot of projects, and we talked about the recreation reserve earlier, and we talk about other things like that, improvement in sporting facilities. We're reaching a point where there's going to be strong competition between what we do as a council and our ability to actually address these plans. It's one thing to say, great plan, this is what we can do if we put this money into it, but if we put money into this, we're taking it out of somewhere else. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but I want people to understand that there is a serious, we're becoming tighter and tighter each year that the government squeezes council's real income.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. Any other councillors like to speak to the debate recommendation? Was it Councillor Bell? Oh, Councillor Lark, sorry. Councillor Lark, go ahead. You're on mute. Oh, there you go.
I wanted to highlight for the community that this is part and parcel of Council's core business, in that this the structures included in this asset management plan are sort of dedicated to our local road network, which is uppermost importance in our minds, and open space. So I just wanted to highlight that aspect, that we are getting back to our core business to ensure the assets that are meaningful for our community are well looked after and in good repair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lark. Councillor Bauer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but it also sounds like we're all in lockstep. Madam Mayor, fellow councillors and ratepayers watching this meeting, I have no problem in supporting this motion and note the extensive plan put forward by the Plus Banking Department. Congratulations. If we let these assets slip, we are neglecting one of our main tenets of existence as a council. I also note part 2 of the motion, funding to deliver the plan is subject to council's annual budget process. As long as we have the rate cap, something will have to give to bring option 3 into reality, and it's clear that option 3 is the way we have to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Any further discussion from any other councillors? Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. While I will be approving this proposal, I'm deeply concerned by the ever-increasing demands for our budget just for the existing assets and the ever-decreasing amount of facilities that we can afford to build that are also required in the community. So I think it's really important that we acknowledge that our budget is shrinking, but our needs are growing, as Councillor Whelan also said. And I do really hope that the money comes from somewhere, because otherwise we're going to have a situation where realistically we'll have assets that are going to degrade in quality, and we will not be able to provide the much needed increased need of facilities for the community.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Rooks, anything further as you're the mover, put it to the vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Those council in favour of the recommendation? Thank you, that's carried. 8.4, the final mountain bike, BMX and pump strategy. Ms Taylor, please introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present the final Bass Coast mountain bike, pump and BMX strategy to Council for consideration. Interest and participation in recreational riding is increasing across the Shire. Developed with the assistance of a community reference group, this strategy provides an overview of the suitable sites for pump, BMX and mountain bike facilities across the municipality, and in addition it provides a framework for the assessment of sites into the future. It is recommended that the strategy be adopted. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Holstead.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move an alternative if I can.
Yeah, thank you. Have I got a seconder first for the alternate motion?
Do you want to know what it is first?
Yes,
or?
please. Yeah, sorry, Councillor Holstead.
That's okay. That council adopt the Bass Coast Mountain Bike Pump BMX strategy as point 1. Point 2, prepare an implementation plan considering proposed locations, costs and timeframes for delivery included in the facility development summary within the strategy for presentation to council no later than June 2025. Thank you.
Thank you. Have I got a councillor second that alternate motion? Councillor Ellis. Thank you. Councillor Holstead, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've been the chair of the Mountain Bike BMX Pump Strategy Reference Group, so it's been an interesting ride to say the least, no pun intended. Mountain biking, pump tracks and BMX are all exciting recreational opportunities. And I have to say, I, for one, was excited to watch Saya Sakakibara, I hope I said that right, win the gold medal for BMX at the Olympics, and what an inspirational story that sat behind her achievement. Providing these opportunities to our young people in Bass Coast with the support of their community could see our very own Olympians. So well done, and thank you to the members of the reference group whose experience was valued throughout this process, to officers Greg Paulson and Angus Cameron for their willingness to listen and incorporate changes from the feedback that we received through community engagement, and also to the newly formed Bass Coast Mountain Bike Association, and particularly Eve Halol and Michael Wright from that association for their thorough consideration of the strategy, and they also provided really valuable feedback. So all of these groups have expressed their support for the strategy, and I'm really excited for the future possibilities that these sports in Bass Coast will provide for not just the young, but also the young at heart. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. Councillor Ellis.
I think Councillor Halstead pretty well summed it up. I'd just like to acknowledge the amount of effort that she's put into this strategy and her dedication to the community. Also, she mentioned Eve Hall and a number of other users. Nothing further for me to add.
Thank you. Any other councillors like to discuss? Thank you, Councillor Rooks.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention the importance of people having access to nature. and to the bush. It's really important that people spend time in that area. What this strategy does is open up that opportunity through managed pathways or dedicated paths that might be in certain areas. There will be an opportunity for people to spend more time in nature. The strategy clarifies which, areas are suitable for that. There are various land managers that have different holdings of land within our shire, and some of that is declared suitable for people to get involved, and some of it is not. But where there's that opportunity for people to get involved and get out in nature, I think that's really important. So I really support this strategy, and it complements our skate strategy and our tracks and trails strategy. So good on us.
Thank you. Any other councillors like to speak to the recommendation? No? I'll put that back to Councillor Bauer. Yep.
Yeah, just quickly, thank you, Madam Mayor, fellow councillors, ratepayers watching this meeting. Councillor Holstead and Councillor Rooks have summed us up very well, and I can't add much about it. It's been a pressing need from the community and for our youth for a long time. I wholeheartedly support the alternative motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Councillor Holstead.
Yes, in summing up, Madam Mayor, thank you to the comments from all councillors today. What I do find when we put these strategies before council is often there isn't an implementation plan, and so these strategies or policies can often get sort of caught on a shelf somewhere until the next person comes along and picks them up. So to have an implementation plan will give some, further progress to this strategy. And just before closing, I did mention contributions of a lot of people, but I neglected to also mention Deb Leonard from Cape Woolamai, who approached me along with residents in Cape Woolamai seeking recreational space for the Cape Woolamai community, and at the time they were suggesting a pump track for Sunnyside Reserve. I also would like to thank her for her continued push in this instance, and it's through these community representations via councillors that we can get to this point with the assistance of our officers. So well done to all involved, and I'm really looking forward, as I said, to seeing this strategy come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour of the strategy?
Hang on, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, that's carried. 8.5 is the Bass Coast Industrial Land Use Strategy. Ms Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present the final Bass Coast Industrial Land Use Strategy to Council for consideration. The strategy identifies future locations for industrial land to service the growth of the Shire. It also recommends a number of statutory and non-statutory actions to ensure that our industrial areas are functional, well presented and meet the needs of our growing business community. It is recommended the strategy be adopted. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have a councillor to move the strategy? Thank you, Councillor Holstead. A seconder? Seconder? Councillor Ellis. Thank you. Councillor Holstead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Another sign. Gosh, these signs are coming thick and fast in relation to the growth that's occurring in Bass Coast and the need to provide further industrial land. I picked up earlier on Councillor Whelan's comments around tax grab on land taxes, and that's not flowing through to places where it should, which is obviously we put our hand up for any sort of money to come our way. But the state government's requirement for any landowner who has a rezoning of land that supports and accommodates the growth of our community will be or is expected to pay 60% of the capital gains from that rezoning to the state government. In my view, that is a money grab and doesn't offer fair compensation to the landowners, which are often farmers who have invested in and worked that land for, in some cases, many generations, only to ultimately be handicapped by a huge state government tax. And I think that's shameful, given that we don't see in Bass Coast any of those funds. And I also see it as a disincentive for landowners to want to progress, even though council is opening up the opportunity for them to, take advantage of this rezoning. In their case, it's not really an advantage because they're losing with the big land tax bill that they'll receive. So I just wanted to put that out there, that I do hope that given the state government's policy on this, that it's not going to stop those who are in the rezoning area from allowing industrial land to progress. Zoning is one thing, development is another. And although we as a community require this change, you couldn't blame them for sitting on the land until there is a change of policy at another level of government. I just thought that that was necessary to raise that, Madam Mayor, again, supporting Councillor Whelan's comments earlier about all this money on land tax and it's not getting to the communities through local government to put the infrastructure on the ground. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead. Councillor Ellis?
I pretty well concur with what Councillor Halstead said there. This is a great strategy. It's going to make sure that the industry goes to the areas we want it to go into. The officers have put a lot of work into this. Once again, it's a great strategy and I compliment everybody involved in it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ellis. Any other councillors want to speak to the recommendation? No?
Yes. Hello.
Councillor Halstead, Councillor Bauer, I didn't see you there.
That's okay. I know we're very far away. Madam Mayor, fellow councillors and ratepayers watching this meeting. This is a good and essential piece of work. I congratulate the officers. With the town boundaries now being locked in, it is critical for sustainable growth that is the industrial areas are identified and locked in. This is especially true for the island, which faces the dilemma of tourist haven, residential needs, and areas to service both. The designated areas have to take into account the impact of the environment, visibility, noise, and other polluting factors. It also needs to be done now to minimise the call, not in my backyard. So I endorse the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further councillors? Councillor Lang?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to highlight some excellent proposals from the industrial land use strategy and try to keep my comments to the motion. It's great to see that the Cyclone Street Wonthaggi Industrial Precinct will be proposed to be transitioned over time to become an employment-focused mixed-use precinct because it is so close to the Wonthaggi Activity Centre. I know after speaking to several residents adjacent to that precinct that it's a very interesting site for an industrial area. I also acknowledge that there's some work to be done in the Inverloch Industrial Estate, which also happens to have a really fantastic cafe there, because it also highlights that some of our industrial land uses are not actually industrially focused. So I believe this strategy will give further guidance to people and developers who will be looking to expand their opportunities.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Anything further from the other councillors? Put it back to you, Councillor Halstead, then.
Happy to put to the vote. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. Those in favour of the recommendation? Thank you. That's carried. 8.6, the Environment Fund. Ms Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to seek council endorsement of the constitution and appointment of 2 first directors for the establishment of the Environment Fund, to be known as Nature Recovery Foundation Limited. Upon council's approval, these first directors will establish the company in accordance with relevant legislation. The Nature Recovery Foundation Limited will be structured as a company limited by guarantee. This structure also safeguards land ownership, complemented by conservation covenants, and encourages community and First Nation involvement. With charity status, the initiative can attract philanthropic and grant funding. This approach supports the Council's vision for the Foundation to be financially independent, enabling it to achieve more than would be possible with Council resources alone. Officers have worked collaboratively with Biodiversity Legacy, a non-profit focused on securing land for future generations, to develop the Nature Recovery Foundation Limited. Both Council and Biodiversity Limited will be founding members of the Nature Recovery Foundation Limited. To date, all costs associated with establishing the Environment Fund have been met within the budget allocated. Council has not made any commitment to provide working capital to the fund once established. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Kennedy. Councillor, to move the recommendation, please. Councillor Whelan. A second for that. Recommendation, Councillor Lang. Thank you. Councillor Whelan.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, this is another step in what is a great project, really. The details of that has been covered by the General Manager, but the Constitution goes in terms of purpose. It's set out in the second part of the report with the foundation of the Nature Recovery Foundation, a charitable, not-for-profit environmental organisation dedicated to protecting and enhancing the natural environment. Primary purpose of the company is to reverse biodiversity decline by preserving and enhancing existing habitat, accelerating the restoration of habitat across the landscape is something we need to do. We know that there has been, over the decades leading to where we are now, there was much clearing done in the early days around Bass Coast, but not only Bass Coast, across the country. We need to reverse that. We need to reverse it for a whole lot of reasons. One is because we have serious biodiversity decline. The sorts of things we're seeing with the Varroa, I might have got that right, virus and other such things are a product of the fact that we have really interfered to a dangerous extent with nature. We need to protect it. We need to protect habitat. A number of the things we do in this Shire are pushing towards that. Our push towards protecting the woodlands, for example, very much fits with this. So this is an opportunity to actually, where possible, stand in the market, talk to the charitable funds that are around the place, the philanthropic organisations and the like, to actually look to acquire lands that can then be restored or in the first instance, preferably protected. It's really important. There are also biodiversity and other sorts of offsets that can be sought in relation to that, which will help in that work. It's a very important piece of work. And I thank the officers for their work of getting it to this stage, and I really look forward to seeing it in operation.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to talk about the governance around the creation of the Environment Fund, which Council endorsed at a previous Council meeting. Having been heavily involved as the Deputy Chairperson of Miley Libraries, I've been heavily involved in the creation of Constitution for a not-for-profit charity entity. It's important to acknowledge that the Constitution allows for a balance of directors to allow for the Nature Recovery Foundation to always protect its interests and the values that it proposes to support. So it's also important to note that the 23-24 budget included an allocation of costs. However, to date, there's no further commitment. The plan is ultimately that this becomes an entity that is able to fund its own projects and exercises and provide a really great pathway for our future, the protection of our future areas of conservation, for conservation.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Any other councillors like to add to the Councillor Rooks?
Yeah, I just wanted to say this is fantastic work. It's just such a sensational opportunity for our community and for the environment. There are so many different areas of people that could give towards this entity: the philanthropists, the businesses, other councils, tourists through Give Back, mums and dads. And they might want to give to offset their emissions. They might want to give to invest into the environment, climate change wise. They might just want to invest into nature's beauty. So there's plenty of good reasons why this should be a successful setup that we're doing. And it's really great work.
Thank you, Councillor Rooks. Any other councillors wishing? Councillor Holstead.
Madam Mayor, I just had one question through you to, I think, Officer Kennedy, in relation to Trust for Nature and the differences between this entity that Council is setting up versus what Trust for Nature currently offer.
Ms Kennedy, are you able to answer that now?
Yeah, so in terms of, so through the Mayor, Trust for Nature is an organisation that often goes in and buys land and puts a covenant on that land. When you put a covenant on that land, it locks it up into perpetuity. Yep, thank you. What we want to do is we want to be able to secure land, but we also want to be able to work with groups, community groups, First Nation groups, to obviously work with the conservation values of that land. So if you do the covenant option, you don't have that opportunity going forward. So we've worked with Biodiversity Legacy, and this is really taking it from, there was covenants, Trust for Nature. This is now taking it to the next step of really leveraging and value adding to the conservation works that we're wanting to do. So that's the purpose of this fund going forward.
Councillor Holstead, does that make it clearer?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Do you wish to speak to the recommendation?
No, I'm happy with what I've heard. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any other councillors wishing to speak to the recommendation? Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, fellow councillors and ratepayers watching this meeting. Like Councillor Lang, I've partly written 3 constitutions in my time: the Gemological Association, the Jewelers Association, and the Reason Party's constitution. I've served as a constitutional officer for many years, so those are my credentials. The constitution that we're being asked to adopt is not a problem. It's a straightforward document. The constitution is the what we want to do. The devil will lie in the bylaws, the how we do it. I'm a strong believer in private-public partnerships. Though independent of council, we are a partner and we are liable. I note the second paragraph of the section called finances. Council has not made any commitment to providing working capital for the fund. I hope this commitment can be honoured. Now that we've agreed to do this, all I can say is bon chance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Any other councillors? Sorry, Councillor Lark.
Thank you. In my view, whilst a very important step forward, I believe that council is moving away from its raison d'etre and priorities, and it has the potential to divert staff and other budget resources to deliver services and projects that perhaps are of greater priority in the minds of the community. So I won't be voting for this, although I don't feel absolutely strongly, but I think I have sufficient reservations not to support this particular quest.
Thank you, Councillor Lark. There's no other further discussion. I'll go back to the mover, Councillor Whelan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of points there to answer. Firstly, in terms of the partnerships, I think it's important to, and I acknowledge the question from Councillor Holstead in terms of Trust for Nature. I was Mayor at the time when we were talking to, in this instance, Jim Phillipson, who has had engagement across a number of those organisations, but is also in Biodiversity Legacy. And one of the points that I was at pains to stress that we're not in competition. We want to be in there supporting the effort that is going on from Biodiversity Legacy, Trust for Nature. We all have our roles. And one of the things that this can do that the others probably can't do is take offset money from councils that are looking to offset their emissions profiles and that sort of thing. So it provides a service into the local government industry in that sense, or potentially does. I take up Councillor Bauer's point. There is no reason why council shouldn't direct further funds to this, but it would be on the basis of a budget contribution. We do that at the moment already through Landcare. One of the things we've done with Landcare is plant nearly 1 million trees over the last few years, front-ending our drawdown efforts in terms of the Climate Action Plan. So these are things that are there, they're not guaranteed and they're not committed forward, and that is entirely appropriate. But it could happen, and it would be something that would be there and open and transparent if it was to happen. So I think they're important things to mention. In terms of the old traditional approach of rates and rubbish, we moved past that decades ago. anyone who's still stuck back there needs to read the Local Government Act. And so it's important, for example, one of the things that this can do is really assist the visitor economy. By people don't want to go to, well, they do want to go to visit a desert, one that's supposed to be a desert, you know, in terms of coming to a place that is vegetated. That's why we're looking at the DAL in terms of protecting the open spaces and those sorts of things. These things work hand in hand with industry. They are fundamentally important to the work that we undertake across the board. This is looking to enhance that.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. We'll put that to the vote. Those in favour of the recommendation? So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against? Thank you, that's carried.
Division, please, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Those in favour for the division? Councillor Whelan, Councillor Rooks, Councillor Lasserve, Councillor Tassari, Councillor Lang and Councillor Ellis. Those against? Councillor Lark, Councillor Holstead and Councillor Bauer. Thank you. 8.7. Thank you. This is 8.7 is art collection policy. Ms McMahon, please introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to seek Council's adoption of the art collection policy. This policy provides a collection management framework for acquiring, managing and deaccessioning artworks into the Bass Coast Shire Council art and public art collection. Bass Coast Shire Council managed the Council's art collection, public art collection and the Robert Smith collection, and to ensure effective and appropriate management of the current and future collection, a policy outlining a collection management framework is required. The collection has a focus on artworks that have local significance, either through geographic or community relevance. This policy has been reviewed and supported by the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee, who provided valuable feedback and consultation. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you. Have I got a councillor to move the recommendation? Councillor Holstead. Seconded to the recommendation. Councillor Lang. Councillor Holstead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As Chair of the Bass Coast Arts and Culture Advisory Committee, I am aware of the input by the committee and the broader arts groups across Bass Coast on this policy. Supportive of a framework for the collection of artworks by Bass Coast, it is important to ensure the long-term benefits, sustainability, relevance, preservation and accessibility for all to enjoy. I am, however, cautious when discussing equity in the arts. Although I wish to see more representation of gender equality, I'm also mindful that the arts should be considered on merit, being expression of the artist rather than based on gender. That would be my only concern, and it was also expressed by the committee themselves at a recent Arts and Culture Advisory Committee meeting. I do think there's more work to do in the arts section amongst other plans. I've heard from Councillor Whelan, who I'm sure will put his views forward today, but I also think I also want to preempt that I support his point of view, and that I do think there's a lot more work to be done when it comes to our policies and plans relating to arts. So I'll leave it at that, Madam Mayor, and allow other councillors to put forward their views. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was earlier in the term co-chair of the Arts and Advisory Committee, and I think they would welcome this collection because it has been a point of discussion for quite some time, but it needed a lot of work, and I acknowledge the council officers' work in this. I did, however, want to, I don't know why I feel like I have to say this. Well, I do, because it seems like this concept of merit comes up when gender equity is discussed in the community, and I find it bizarre because the reality is that art isn't evaluated historically on the basis of merit. It's men that are prioritised because people aren't recognising their own internal biases in favour of male artwork when they're evaluating art. Now, it's interesting to note, and it says this in the report, that 71% of artists who graduate from art school are women, but our arts collection does not reflect that statistic. We have a disproportionate amount of male artists, and it does not follow that male artists are better artists. It just actually follows that women are consistently having to come across this merit-based argument when we are faced with discrimination on a daily basis. So I just wanted to highlight that. I think it's excellent that the arts collection policy is addressing the inequity in our arts collection, and it also recognises our legislative requirements to abide by the terms of the Gender Equality Act.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Is there any other councillors who'd like to speak to the recommendation? No? Okay. Councillor Holstead, would you like to close on that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I'm not. just in relation to Councillor Lang's comments there, I believe the community as a whole are embracing gender equality. I know it's taking a long time for it to get through the system, but it's been a long time where men have had, I guess, a higher consideration or ranking. And I would wonder whether that actually comes down to who's actually judging the artwork. But for me, art has always been about what individuals perceive. So it's a very difficult one to say that artwork is, or that gender is an issue in the arts world, because it's anyway, we could have a really good long debate offline on this one, I think, Councillor Lang. But I'm just going to say that I think the policy is terrific. I think that the officers have done an amazing job. I believe the committee has had input and expressed the same views as I have put in the chamber today. And this is a great start with a lot more work to do. And I'm sure our arts department are quite capable of doing that work to refine what needs to be refined. So I will be supporting the recommendation.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Holstead. I'll put the recommendation. Those councillors in favour of the policy, art collection policy? Thank you, that's carried. 8.8 Crown Land Policy. Ms Boyley, will you please introduce the recommendation?
Thank you, Mayor. Council has been considering its role in the management of Crown land since early 2022. The draft policy was endorsed for exhibition in April 2023, and a number of changes have been made to the policy based on feedback received and subsequent discussion. It's recommended that Council adopt the Crown Land Policy, which provides a principles-based approach to the investment in and management of Crown land. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Boyley. I've got a councillor recommended, Councillor Tessari. Thank you. As seconder is Councillor Holstead. Councillor Tessari.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When this first went out and the letters went out to some of our community groups, it's fair to say that there was a shock that rang through the community on the original approach that we took, and we certainly listened to that. I got a lot of phone calls. I sat down with a lot of groups after that initial correspondence went out. And I think it's great work by our officers to listen to what our concerns were on representing the community and adjust it accordingly so we can be more flexible when we need to be with certain groups that are operating on Crown land. So well done. I endorse this piece of work. It's been a massive piece of work that's gone on for some time, but that time was delayed because we were adjusting it according to what the community groups on the Crown land had to say. So good piece of work and well done.
Thank you, Councillor Tessari. Councillor Holstead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with Councillor Tessari wholeheartedly. I remember bringing this back to Council through a notice of motion. I think it was in 2022. It's been bouncing around since then. I think the officers also were a little sceptical in our briefings about the direction that we initially were taking with this policy. And it was good we were all on the same page. The community gave their feedback, so everybody's been involved in this one, and I'm really happy to see it come to council for adoption. It'll just ensure that any investment that we make on Crown land provides an acceptable level of benefit for our local community. So each request is being monitored against the policy, and will provide some ability for council to push back on cost shifting with a bit of luck. So well done to everyone involved, and I will be supporting the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. Any other councillors wish to speak to the recommendation? Councillor Whelan?
Yes, beware of, it's a little bit, I would not say that these days, probably not appropriate. It's something to do with Greeks and gifts, but beware of gifts in the first place, because we get this myth about gifting land, the state is gifting land to local government. That's a crock, frankly. Because firstly they can't, because it remains Crown land, and secondly they're just apportioning the costs of managing that land, and they've done it willy-nilly in the past and left us with a burden. There's no two ways about it. So I think the key point of the strategy is the expectations of the state government. And one of the areas, the management of Crown land is broken. There's not enough money going into it from the state. They have volunteer committees around the place that are not resourced to do their job. It's not good enough. And we need to, as I say, beware of gifting of things like across the road. I understand we've got to a more cooperative position on that. I think the work that's been done there is excellent, but that is what needs to happen. We look at how things should be developed in our area. They need to step up and manage their own land. They are not doing that. One of the areas of great exposure to communities across the country is in the area of our coastal management. We face incredible, and we do here right in this shire. We're on parole at Inverloch at the moment, but we're under strong attack in Silverleaves at this point in time. Local government, and I said earlier, I won't go over it again, but I said earlier about them squeezing local government's income while at the same time squeezing everyone else in terms of money into their coffers through land tax. We need the state to step up in terms of coastal management, in terms of management of coastal erosion. We need the policy. What are they going to do in terms of these areas? Are they going to step up or are they just going to ignore it and let the ocean take, for example, Woodlands Avenue in Silverleaves back? Because that's where it's heading at the moment. So the people that live there need clear direction. This is Crown land, we're the Committee of Management. We don't have the resources to be able to step up and do what would be necessary to stop the ocean or the bay coming in and taking that land back. It's a key point. And also, they do not manage the assets on their plots, as we see with the degradation of this building across the road that's become inhabitable. And that's not good enough.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. Any other councillors like to speak to it? Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Very briefly, I just wanted to express I had some reservations about the original versions of this Crown policy because I didn't want us to cut off our nose to spite our face in terms of the value that a lot of these sites provide to the community groups that Councillor Tassari alluded to. So I think that this policy does really more diplomatically reflect a better approach to managing Crown land and how we cannot continue to cover the costs that aren't really within our remit. So,
thank you, Councillor Lang. Any other further discussion from councillors? Councillor Ellis.
I just want to pile on a little bit there with Councillor Whelan talking about committees of management and DECA and council and Crown land. It almost reflects colonisation, the way we've drawn lines on maps and saying this is our little bit, that's your little bit. DECA in Victoria has 1,500 committees of management managing bits of land. That's totally unworkable. I don't know how you even get 10% of them in a room at any one time. Talking about foreshore committees and that, along the waterline, in between Jam Jurup and just below Coronella Bass there's 5 different committees of management organising Crown land on the foreshore there. Some of them are DECA, some of them are us. There's actually a part in Coronet Bay where you can walk from the car park to the water and you go through 4 management authorities in less than 500 metres. I agree with Councillor Whelan, the whole thing is crazy. I think we need to go back to square one and work out a better way of managing Crown land, and also include our Indigenous First Nations people in the management of that too, because I know, for example, in Coronella, they have been completely cut out of any discussion about what was originally their land as we move forward. And even the community over there is enraged with what goes on there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Any further discussion? No? I'll go back to you, Councillor Tessari. Thank you. Put that to the vote. Those in favour of the Crown Land Policy recommendations? Thank you. That's carried. 8.9 is Committee of Management boundary changes to 24 Old Bridge Road, New Haven. Ms Borley.
Thank you, Mayor. This report recommends changes to the boundaries of the area of the Committee of Management and Lease Plan area at 24 Old Bridge Road in New Haven. The proposed changes to the boundary have been prepared in consultation with the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action, DECA, Phillip Island Nature Parks and the current leaseholder. It is recommended that Council approve the change of the area of the Committee of Management and approve the submission of the change area to DECA for ministerial approval and support a variation of the lease to be prepared with the new, slightly smaller lease plan area. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Borley. Have I got a councillor to move the recommendation, please? Is that you, Councillor Rooks? Okay, thank you, Councillor Rooks. Seconder?
I was just taking my glasses off, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Lang, thank you. Councillor Rooks?
Thank you, Mayor Serve. In this case, yes, Council is the Committee of Management to DECA Land, so it's quite pertinent. This has come up directly after that last report. But the boundary changes have been worked through with DECA, who are the land managers or landowners. They're supportive of this, as well as Phillip Island Nature Park, who are the adjoining landholders. So I'm happy to support this change.
Thank you. Councillor Lang?
Nothing further.
Thank you. Any other councillors wishing to speak to the recommendation? Councillor Whelan?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I want to put some context around this. This has partly arisen out of destruction by agents of the company concerned, where I had a complaint back in May 2023 about illegal clearing of vegetation and the removal of the dune and the building of structures on that area. As I understand, that was unauthorised. It was an agent of the company involved, and the company has been particularly cooperative since. It needs to be acknowledged, though, that I do not give the company a clearance in respect to that. They have failed to manage this, and that needs to be put in my view, in capital letters. They have failed to manage the environment of this area to the point where it's environmental destruction. They've built structures outside of the leasehold area on Crown land. So there's a hell of a mess there to be cleaned up, and this is part of that process, and I've been persuaded that that's the case, because when I arrived here today I was voting against this. I've been persuaded that this is part of fixing the mess that's created. Now, in terms of governance, this mess should have been fixed when we let the lease out in the first instance, and I don't believe we've performed as well as we should have at that point either. We need to be careful going forward in terms of our property management that we have the highest standards possible. We need to also pursue breaches of clearance. In 8 years I've been on council, one of the things that I and others have banged on about is pushing back against coastal clearing and the full force of enforcement, which is like attacking them with a wet lettuce leaf, regrettably. We do not have the real power to enforce these things. A $2,000 fine for massive destruction of dunes and habitat is not proportionate with the crime, in my view. So I don't say reluctantly, but I'm very unhappy with how the whole management of this issue, not by council, although to some extent that does apply, but really by our agent in this, in terms of the leaseholder, and they need to do better into the future. And they need to acknowledge that to the community too, let me say, because this came to me as a community complaint, and I think we became aware of it through the community. Apparently they weren't supposed to be on the land. Well, thank God they were. because we've got a serious breach of the law here, and we're going to say, well, you're trespassed. Oh, naughty. We'll take you on, but we won't take this on. No, that's not the way we operate. So it needs to be taken on, needs to be fixed, and there's a whole can of worms there that yet is going to have to be sorted out by this company in fixing this going forward. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. Any other councillors wishing to speak to the recommendation? Councillor Tessari?
I'll just add my 2 cents worth to that, and I was very nervous when Councillor Whelan was about to start there because I wasn't quite sure where he was going to end up. He was quite irate this morning, so well done, Councillor Whelan. I agree with most of the things he said. I truly do. It's very disappointing, and for the 8 years that he's sat there and banged on about the destruction of the foreshore, I agree, because we don't seem to have the power to be able to stop these guys from continually doing it. It just continues to happen time and time again. And the minute fines that we put out to these guys, it's nothing to them. So we need to get fair income about it. We need to get a bit stronger about it. I think the work our guys have done to get to this position has been fantastic, and this will clean up what is a mess. So I get that totally, but it's just frustrating that we actually get to this position.
Thank you, Councillor Tessari. Any other councillors wishing to speak to the recommendation? No? Go back to Councillor Rooks.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Secretary. So I agree with everything that Councillor Tessari is saying, and most of what Councillor Whelan said too. It's you're lucky, don't worry. And acknowledge everything that you've said there, Councillor Whelan, because it's important what you have said. So thank you for sharing that. Unfortunately, this recommendation sort of just goes to one particular point, and so that's with regard to the boundary change. So that's what we're voting on, and I support that.
Okay, we'll put the recommendation. Those councillors in favour of the recommendation? Thank you, that's carried. 8.10 is a non-award of tender at Bayview Avenue Inverloch drainage renewal and flood mitigation. Ms Taylor?
Thank you, Mayor.
Introduce the report.
The purpose of this report is to present to Council the outcomes of the tender process for drainage renewal and flood mitigation works at Bayview Avenue in Inverloch. Upon completing the evaluation process, the panels recommended that the tender not be awarded and that the project be rescoped and retendered at a later date. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Have I got a councillor who will move the recommendation? Councillor Tessari, thank you. A seconder? Councillor Lang, thank you. Councillor Tessari?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is just a good example of our guys being able to I guess, work the system. So if we don't get a tender that is in our scope of works for the price that we want, we can step back, reevaluate, and go again. So well done to our guys to come to that call, because it certainly didn't fit into the scope that we were looking for. So we'll reevaluate and go again. So thank you.
Councillor Tessari, Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to acknowledge the tenderers who are involved. I know it takes a lot of work to put together a tender. Unfortunately, we have really rigorous processes in place, and we are also constrained by our finances in making these decisions, as well as the other three bottom lines. So sometimes it just doesn't work out.
Okay, thank you. Have I got any other councillors wishing to speak to the recommendation? No? Councillor Tessari?
Put it to the vote, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Those in favour of the recommendation? Thank you, that's carried. 8.11, award tender to culvert renewal for Almerta, Glen Forbes Road. Ms Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present to Council the outcome of the tender process for culvert renewal at Almerta, Glen Forbes Road. Upon completing the evaluation process, the panel has recommended Landshape as the contractor providing best value for money to Council. It is recommended that the tender be awarded. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Taylor. Councillor Tessari and Councillor Holstead. Councillor Tessari.
Love me culverts, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Holstead. Councillor Tessari, please go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I'd already started. Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is just a good result for the township of Almerta and to get this culvert replaced. And I'm very happy that we're about to get going with that.
Thank you, Councillor Tessari. Councillor Holstead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Woohoo! One for the farmers. Oh, this is really good news. I've spoken to a number of the farmers out in the hinterland, and the bridges are in dire straits. So this is great to see that this tender is being awarded, and the bridge will be made much safer. And look, I'm sure the farmers are really looking forward to driving their tractors over it. So well done. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. Any other councillors wishing to speak to the recommendation? No? Oh, Councillor Lang?
Thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge the commitment of
That was all right, sorry.
bit of action going on. It's great I just wanted to acknowledge the commitment of funding from the Bridges Renewal Program, the Heavy Vehicle Safety and Productivity Program, and the Heavy Vehicle Rest Area Initiatives, which have contributed to this. And I think this award of tender also highlights the ever-increasing cost of just the assets and needs that our community has that are existing, that further constrain our budget for further facilities that we also need.
Thank you. No other councillors? Not. Councillor Tessari?
Put it to a vote, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Those councillors in favour of the recommendation? Thank you. That's carried. 11.12, Instrument Appointment and Authorisation. Ms Borley, would please introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to recommend that Council resolve to appoint the named officer as an authorised officer and approve the execution of the attached instrument of appointment and authorisation.
Thank you, Ms Borley. Councillor to move. Councillor Tessari? Thank you. Seconder? I've got a councillor to second it. Councillor Rooks? Thank you. Councillor Tessari?
Purely procedural, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Rooks? Any other councillor would like to discuss the recommendation? Councillor Holstead?
Madam Mayor, if I could ask through you to Officer Donna Taylor, if she could give us a short verbal update on how planning in Bass Coast is going. It is an area of extreme community interest, so I just wonder if she could...
Sorry, Councillor Holstead, we're not to stat reports yet. We're just on 8.12.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Okay, I shouldn't have jumped in there.
That's
Sorry,
all right.
Madam Mayor.
Oh, is there anything you'd like to add to 8.12? Okay, thank you. Any other councillors wishing to add anything? No, I'll put it back to Councillor Tessari.
No, put it to a vote, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Those in favour of the recommendation? You'll see Councillor Holstead. Yep, thank you. That's carried. Okay. 8.13, review of instrument of delegation. Ms Borley, could you please introduce this one?
Thank you, Mayor. This report recommends that Council approve the updated Instrument of Delegation from Council to staff and the Instrument of Subdelegation Environment Protection Act 2017 from Council to staff. The revised instruments reflect amendments to legislation and updated position descriptions following organisational structure changes. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Have I got a councillor move the recommendation? Councillor Lang. Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Tessari. Thank you. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is procedural, but the reason it's procedural is because we're following the rules in the Environment Protection Act. So it's not for fun that we do this. It's legislatively mandated. So I think it also highlights how important it is to follow the rules.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Tessari.
Couldn't agree more, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this report, the recommendation? No? Thank you. Councillor Lang?
Nothing further.
Thank you. Put it to the vote. Hang on. I didn't see you. Was that Councillor Lark? Did you have your hand up? Before we put
Yes. I was just going to say that the delegations go far and wide across broad activities of council, not just the environment Protection Act covers things like cemeteries and crematoria, etc. So it's quite comprehensive, the delegation document that we are authorising today.
That's right. Thank you, Councillor Lark. Back to Councillor Lang. Is there anything further? Councillor Lang?
Yeah, nothing further.
Nothing further. Put that to the vote then. Those council in favour of the recommendation? Thank you. That's carried. Right. Now we'll move on to statutory reports. Thank you. I request the councillor to move thank you, Councillor Tessari. And seconder, Councillor Lang. Thank you. That agenda items 9.1, 9.2, 9.3 be considered as a block. Vote on that. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. If there's any councillor wishing to discuss a report.
I'm guessing there is.
Report. Sorry, Councillor Holstead.
Yes, Madam Mayor, my apologies for earlier. I had my notes out of order. I'm not sure it required a point of order, just a clarification from you, Madam Mayor. So again, I apologise. I just wanted to ask Officer, through you, Madam Mayor, Officer Donna Taylor, to give Council a verbal update on how our planning in Bass Coast is going. It is an area that has strong community interest, and given cost of living crisis and the impact of building, increased building material costs, how is our planning department going with their applications, and is there still interest in commercial and industrial sites as well as residential?
Through the Mayor, application numbers coming into our statutory planning team remain strong and consistent with previous years. We have seen the average value of planning permit applications reduce over the last 12 months, not seeing the larger proposals that we have seen in previous years and through COVID. There is, however, a slight coming away of building permit activity, and we have seen quite a significant reduction in the number of building permits issued in the Shire in recent months. We still have lots of interest from the development community, particularly in Wonthaggi North East, and we're working with up to 8 or 10 developers who are looking to submit planning permit applications in our growth front. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Ms Taylor.
Thank you, Ms Taylor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That was really interesting information, and I know the community does like to hear how that department particularly is travelling. So thank you for that feedback.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Lark.
Yes, the CEO has a delegation of $1 million in relation to contracts. I'm just wanting confirmation formally from Ms Borley that with regard to extended contracts, they can be in excess of $1 million. There are 2 contracts in that category for this meeting. And if she could just explain the procurement guidelines and policies in that regard for the record.
Thank you, Ms Borley.
Thank you, Councillor Lark. Through you, Madam Mayor, the Council's Procurement Policy 2023 has a delegation awarded to the CEO, where the CEO can make a contract extension which is within 20% of the allocated budget, or $100,000, whichever is the lesser amount. There isn't a cap on the final number there. So in this instance, the award of the extension of contract is within the budget allocation, within 20% of the budget allocation, and therefore able to be done under delegation.
Councillor Lark.
Yeah, happy with that explanation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Thank you. I request that a councillor move.
I had a little bit more.
Sorry, who was that? You did, Councillor. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight that a lot of work has gone into determining the service providers for services like the YMCA, so that we get the best bang for buck.
Good, thank you, Councillor Lang. Would have the councillor move that the recommendation attachment to the agenda 9.1, 9.2 and 9.3 be adopted. Thank you, Councillor Tessari, a seconder. Councillor Ellis, thank you. Thank you. That all those in favour? Thank you, that's carried. Right. There is no urgent business. Item 10 was urgent business. The next meeting of council will be held on the 18th of September and here in the Civic Centre. So now that the meeting will be closed to members of the public to this section, pursuant to Section 66 of the Local Government Act 2022 to consider an item as they deal with council's business information being information that would prejudice the council's position in commercial negotiations if prematurely released. So is there a councillor that will move? Thank you, Councillor Ellis. A councillor to second? Thank you, Councillor Lang. And we'll vote all those in favour. Close the meeting. I didn't